Welcome to the Be Mindful podcast. I am your host, women's mindset and manifestation coach, Rachel Rosal Torrio. If you are interested in manifestation, personal development, or spirituality, you have came to the right place. This podcast was created with the intention to help you become mindfully aware of how you think, what you speak, and what you believe, because who you are from within is what you will attract from the out. Let's begin. Hi there, beautiful soul. Welcome back to the Be Mindful podcast. If you are new here and you are listening in, and especially if you're listening in on Spotify, I just want to share with you and remind you that you can also watch this video. So if you are listening to Spotify, you also can open it up and you can watch this video while you're listening. But let's say you can't watch the video because you're driving and listening in, then you can do that too. Another option is if you want to watch the video on YouTube, but this podcast is pretty much available anywhere you want to listen to. Now let's get into the episode. I'm super excited to be back because your girl was really sick. Right after Thanksgiving, I was literally in bed for like 3 to 4 days, doing absolutely nothing, being a literal potato, and it was really tough. I was so bored. I can't even tell you how many movies and shows I've watched. And that's all I was able to do, literally watch something or read something. And I was so bored. It made me more grateful to have the ability to have routines and set habits and be able to go to the gym. Like, I was not able to do any of that. So the fact that I'm feeling so much better just makes me happy because one, I can record this episode for you guys, and two, I get to do things that I normally can do again. So the intention of today's episode is to help you let go of the belief that you're lazy or you are just flat out unmotivated. If this is something that you believe is personally you, this is your sign. This is your reminder that that is not true, and you're going to let go of that belief today. Because whatever belief you have about yourself, that is how you're going to show up. And we are not going to show up as being lazy or unmotivated. And we're going to go into that too about motivation, because it's obvious that we can't stay motivated every day, all the time. We clearly have to be disciplined and we do have to show up, but I'm going to give you some tips on that today so that you can show up and be productive. I thought this would be a great episode as well because it's so relatable. I've definitely been there where I was not consistent when working on specific goals. I've definitely been there where I was so hard on myself because I kept telling myself that I was lazy or that I was unmotivated. But the more I started telling myself that, I started to believe that was really me. And then we create this guilt and shame about ourselves and we compare ourselves to other people like we should be doing more. But we forget that sometimes we really are doing enough and there's only so much that we can do, especially throughout our day. If you have a full-time job and you're also juggling many other things and other projects outside of that, give yourself some grace and recognize that there's only 24 hours in a day and there's only so much you can do. I also know what it's like to feel like you're on a hamster wheel where you're starting up this goal again. Let's say going to the gym. I think that's something that's so relatable where so many people have this goal. They want to go to the gym maybe 5 to 6 times a week and they start and they're consistent and then it leads to them slowing down or they just completely stop and then they restart over again. So it's like you're on this hamster wheel where you're starting and then stopping and then starting and then stopping. I know exactly what that's like. And so we're going to talk about that today. And I'm going to give you some tips too, how you can try to prevent self-sabotage and recognize when you're just simply in your head. The first tip I want to give you is to just get real with yourself. Who is it that you want to become? Why do you have this goal? So let's go back to working out and having a goal to be maybe more fit. What does that look like in your eyes? What are the actions that you need to start implementing to become that version of yourself? And once you get clear of what those actions are, I want you to read it and ask yourself, okay, is this realistic actions for me based on my daily schedule, based on my current lifestyle? Does this work for me? And am I going to enjoy it? When it comes to working on any goal, it's really important to recognize if you are trying to create this version of you that you know deep down you actually don't like those habits that you're creating for yourself. Like you actually look at it as homework. That's the thing. When you see it as homework, you're not going to have fun. You're going to hate it. So it's important to know what it is that you don't like and do like. So that is your challenge for today. I want you to write down who is it that you want to become and how can you show up as them? If you want some assistance with this, check my show notes and I do have a monthly manifestation guide. It's absolutely free. You just download it and then it's going to give you tips on how you can write down those habits and those actions and those beliefs that you need in order for you to show up as this person. So if you fall off of whatever it is that you're working on, so again, as the example of going to the gym, I want you to ask yourself, what are the habits and routines that have been preventing me from being the person I want to be? Then I ask myself, what are the habits and routines that I need to do more often so that I can feel good about myself and also be excited to get that done? I think I've mentioned this on a podcast episode before, but if there is, let's say, a specific workout that you are doing because you think it's going to achieve the goal that you want, you're doing it all wrong. The reason why is because you hate it. So why do a workout that you hate? The key is to have fun, and the key is to try to enjoy it. So why not choose a workout that you actually enjoy? And sometimes, of course, when we go to the gym, we're not excited, we're not ecstatic, but we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about creating discipline in your life and being able to show up even when you don't feel like it. So let's talk about that right now and how you can start avoiding self-sabotage and start creating discipline in your life. So let's say you're about to not go to the gym and you're about to stop yourself. I want you to pause in that moment and become aware of your thoughts. So in that moment, when you are about to say, oh, I'm not going to the gym anymore, ask yourself why? Why do I not want to go? I saw an interview with Mel Robbins recently, and she was saying that you need to be able to take actions without your emotions because our thoughts and our behaviors, the actions that we take, that's our responsibility. And when I heard that, that was so powerful. And this is so true. Be observant of your thoughts and really ask yourself, like, what are the thoughts that are happening right now? What is arising? Am I doubting myself? Am I comparing myself? Am I just using this an excuse because maybe someone upset me or I got really stressed at work today, so I just want to give myself a day off? Really get clear on the reason why you don't want to go. Another thing is asking yourself, are you setting goals that are attainable and work well with your lifestyle? I am someone who has suffered with body dysmorphia, and I would set goals like wanting to just be skinny, but I didn't really have an actual definition of what that was or what that looked like. And I never involved being healthy as my goal. And that's why it was never necessarily attainable. So even understanding what your goal is and like why you've set that goal and if it's actually realistic is a key important factor because you're just going to keep going and going, but it's not really a goal that's realistically attainable. And again, making sure that this goal that you are reaching towards, the actions you're putting towards it, is it impacting your lifestyle in a negative way? And if it is, how can you adjust it where it's creating more positivity in your life? When it comes to discipline, that's probably the hardest thing. And I'm not perfect. I'm definitely not fully disciplined in everything that I do. There's some days that I don't show up either, and that's just a fact. But what I will tell you is that discipline will create more confidence within yourself. That's why the affirmation for me, if I never quit, I won't ever fail, really works for me. Because yes, there are some times where I'm not fully consistent, but I'm disciplined in a way where no matter what, I'm still going to show up even if I have any setbacks. And with discipline, motivation will just not always be there, and we have to accept that. So this is where it's our responsibility. How can we get into that flow? How can we get excited to work on the tasks that we need to get done? So if it's for the gym, How can you pump yourself up? Is it through music? Is it through watching someone on YouTube and looking at their workout videos and seeing how they're showing up for themselves so that it can inspire you? Is it maybe listening to a podcast, or is it you just going on a short walk to kind of get that blood flow in? But another example could be, let's say you are a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, and you need to get something done. We're not in school anymore where we have specific deadlines. These deadlines are basically up in the air and we create it ourselves. And I think that's what makes it harder, especially for entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs. I mean, that's something that I definitely struggled with. I needed more structure. For example, I do work a full-time job and I also have this podcast and I'm also a coach. When I'm done with my 8 to 5, I have all these open hours before and after that. And I have to be responsible with my time. I have to be very intentional. I need to create that structure in my life when things need to get done. And sometimes I'm definitely not motivated. And sometimes I am so tired from my 8 to 5 that I don't want to do it. So I have to find a way for me to get into my flow. And understanding how that works for me is the only way I could do that. So, for example, creating episodes for this podcast is very fun, but it also can be very tedious because I am a one-man show. I set up my camera, I record myself, I do the edits, I post everything. I even like cut and crop things like to post on my social media if I have time. I do everything on my own. So it can be fun, but it can also be tedious. And so sometimes I really do have to get in that mindset, not sometimes, every time actually. I need to get in that mindset and get into that flow. And the way for me to do that is to make sure I prepare throughout the day. So for example, during my lunchtime today, I wanted to make sure that my camera had enough storage. I needed to make sure that it was charged. And then towards the end of my workday, I made sure that my camera was set up already. I reviewed my notes for my podcast. I set up my little mic right here. I also have my water in handy because your girl is always thirsty and needs to stay hydrated. So that is what helps me get into my flow of being prepared to show up for this episode. Everyone works differently. So it's finding what works for you. And I always say that and I always repeat it, and it may be annoying, but it's very true that you need to find your own groove and you're never going to know without trial and error. So let's rewind real quick to recap what we talked about. The first tip I gave you was to write down who you want to become and how you're going to show up as a person. And I did recommend to download my manifestation monthly guide if you are interested. It'll make it so much easier and faster for you while you work on this. The other tip I gave you was how you can avoid self-sabotage so that you can create more discipline in your life. I gave you a few question prompts that you can write down and work on, and I also gave you tips on how you can get into that flow state. So a great tip I want to give you next is knowing when to stop. So for example, for business owners, you do not have scheduled times, right? Like you would for working a full-time job. You have to set those times. So create a time block for yourself, how long you're going to work on something. And then when it reaches that time, just stop. Sometimes we get so into the flow that you're just like, oh my gosh, I want to keep going. Like I'm in the flow. Like I don't want to stop. But then by the time you're actually done, you're so burnt out and you might not have enough time or energy to get other things done that you wanted to get done. Having that ability to navigate when to stop and have that awareness is actually really powerful. And you're being very intentional with your time and your energy. Last tip I want to give you is to have the awareness of why you have not been consistent, why you keep stopping, why you're not working towards that goal. Why are you on the hamster wheel? What is your intentions when you're working on that project or working on that goal? Are you doing it for the right reasons? Are you really doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for other people? Are you doing it because you feel like you need to do it? Get clear on that. Awareness is so powerful. I say this all the time. And sometimes we forget. We forget to acknowledge these things. And I think it's really important because if it's something that you genuinely don't want to do and you hate, then I think it's time to adjust and reevaluate. There are multiple ways to achieve a goal or get a task done. And that's where the trial and error comes. Just figuring it out and seeing what works for you. But even with everything we talked about, I just want to remind you that you're not lazy and you're not unmotivated. You're just in your head. That's where we get so stuck. We get stuck in our head, and then we create these scenarios in our head that stop us from doing what we really want to do. And that's where awareness again comes in, and how it's so powerful, because it's knowing the thoughts that come through when we want to stop being consistent, stop staying disciplined. That way we can pivot and then reset and start again, but take different actions towards it. And sometimes it takes a minute. Sometimes we stay on the hamster wheel for a little bit and we're still trying to figure things out. But just remember, you're not perfect. No matter what happens, just continue to tell yourself it's going to work out. I'm gonna keep going. It's okay if I mess up. It's okay if I hit these challenges. And I want to continue assuming that only the best is available for me. So it's really your mindset. It's really your perspective. There's no point in worrying. Worrying is not, it's pointless. And that was a habit that I continued to do for most of my life, where I would worry that it wasn't going to work out. But it's like, but what if it does? Why can't I just assume that? Why can't I just assume that it's always going to work out? I really hope that this episode was motivating for you. I know that during this time of the year in the fall, we tend to get a little comfortable. It's the holidays. We just want to chill, which is totally fine. But let's not forget our goals. Let's still show up for them as much as possible and get excited about smashing those goals. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave me a comment. Or if you are watching on Spotify, listening on Spotify, leave me a comment too. Let me know if you have any other requests. I love hearing from you guys. And don't forget to be mindful, because who you are from within will attract from the out. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Wow.